Well, let's get more on this for the analysis. Laurie Tathinen joins us, Senior Associate of the America Programme at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies. A very good evening to you. These far-right protesters aren't going away, are they?
Doesn't seem that way.
And in terms of what happens next, one wonders how far stepping up security can work. How far will the wind of these far-right protesters carry them?
It's really has been an ongoing process because this all began really the day after the runoff. So it's been going on for 2 months now. But at this point, we're seeing the clearest steps that any kind of assistance, any kind of even support may be considered illegal under these current measures. So I think the end game might be nearer than we think.
Does responsibility lie with Jair Bolsonaro for what's been happening?
That's a tricky question. Obviously, this entire movement that seems detached from the reality in which many of us live, that is in many ways his responsibility. He built up this movement over a period of years, but at the same time, he has been very much missing in action. He has been in Florida for over a week now, which is obviously complicates U.S.-Brazil relations to have him on U.S. soil while this is going on. But at the same time, he was not there to incite the crowd on Sunday. He was not physically present. Afterwards, he did post on Facebook and kept it up for a couple hours, a video late last night saying that Lula would have not been chosen by the people of Brazil, but by the Supreme Court and the Electoral Court. So it's a mixed bag.
A series of false statements, though, of course, taken on and amplified via social media creates, quite simply, doesn't it, this kind of situation that we're seeing in Brazil. We saw a similar situation in the United States. How does President Lula begin to reverse this? Because the more hardline he becomes, of course, that could equally backfire on him, couldn't it?
There's a possibility. He needs to be relatively cautious. Right now, Brazil's institutions seem to be working, and I think that's a really important point to remember. Throughout this process, if anything, the courts have taken the lead. There's a very strong judiciary in Brazil. Also, the army. There's no sign that they're equivocating on democracy. The trickier question are a variety of police forces, police agencies that at the very least have been negligent in the process. And I mean that not necessarily in a legal sense, it will be determined in a legal sense, but clearly what happened this past Sunday was something that should have never happened. And the police forces who were present should have been able to prevent it.
Indeed, security forces, I should say, police forces present in Brazil, yeah, according to eyewitnesses, standing back and letting it all happen, which, of course, is the reason why Lula made the decree, which has been endorsed by the Senate. And again, is that a sense, too, that Brazil has a recent history of dictatorship? Will this stoke fears, perhaps, in some quarters that this might happen again? Might it give some of those in the military sector ideas that perhaps they could take advantage of the situation?
We have no sense of those kinds of ideas developing as it is. In some ways, I mean, as absurd as the behavior was, and as absurd as these attacks were on these empty buildings, at the same time, there was also something perhaps even more specious about this kind of attack, because you mentioned the military dictatorship. These have been the seats of Brazil's three powers throughout much of the republic from 1960s onwards, through the military dictatorship and during the republic now. So I think there's a chance here that the people who have supported this, who were involved, supported financially, who were involved there on the stage, that they can be painted into a corner. It looks like reasonable Brazilian politicians are coming together and have come together this week in condemning these attacks. But at the same time, as long as Bolsonaro is not in the country and he's posting videos that may be stoking further protest riots and altercations the situation remains unclear.
Laura Tatnan of the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, thank you very much indeed for that analysis and sharing your thoughts about the situation in Brazil with us. We, of course, are watching for all developments, and we thank you, sir, again, for your contribution. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.